When Aman arrived that summer, I wasn't expecting much to change. I had grown used to silence, long evenings spent with music humming low, the hum of the ceiling fan, and the kind of stillness that creeps in when you've stopped asking for more from life. I was 32, steady, if not content. Love had burned me once, and I'd let its ashes settle untouched. Aman, my sister's only son, was 19, fresh-faced, curious, and brimming with the kind of energy I'd long forgotten. He was supposed to stay for just a month while his parents traveled abroad. I hadn't seen him in over 2 years, not since he'd outgrown his awkward teenage years and turned into someone I barely recognized. From the beginning, he brought life into my quiet world. Mornings became coffee shared on the balcony, evenings turned into spontaneous dinners and old movies. He was clever, gentle, and surprisingly intuitive. And every time he smiled, it lit corners of the house that had long been in shadow. One night, after a long conversation about dreams and regrets, he looked at me differently, his eyes steady, searching. "Can I tell you something?" he asked, voice barely above a whisper. "Of course," I replied, not realizing how much weight those words would soon carry. "I've always wondered," he began slowly, "what it feels like to be really loved. Not just admired or flirted with. I mean, to be seen. To be held in someone's thoughts like I matter. Not for what I offer, but for who I am." I blinked. That kind of honesty doesn't usually come from someone his age. I managed a quiet nod, unsure of what to say. He chuckled, nervous now. "Weird, huh? I mean, most guys my age are out chasing hookups. But me, I think I just want to feel safe, for once." I didn't respond. I couldn't. Because in that moment, I saw pieces of my younger self reflected in him, unloved, aching to be understood, unsure if he ever would be. It unsettled me more than I cared to admit. The next few days passed with an odd shift between us. Our conversations grew deeper. He started watching me when he thought I wasn't looking. I caught myself memorizing the way he spoke, the softness in his laughter. The lines between us, once so clearly drawn, were beginning to blur. Then one evening, while watching the rain from the kitchen doorway, he said it, softly, like a confession only meant for the walls. "I have a wish," he murmured. "And I don't know if it's fair, but I want to feel loved. Not later. Not someday. And I want it from you." I didn't move. I didn't speak. I just stood there, heart pounding, the quiet suddenly heavy between us. Because deep down, I knew something had changed. And I wasn't sure I could say no. I tried to forget what Aman had said, to tuck it away like a stray thought that didn't belong. But his words lingered, echoing through quiet moments, slipping into dreams, curling around the silence between us like smoke. He didn't bring it up again, but something had shifted. Our rhythm changed, subtly but unmistakably. When he laughed, I watched too long. When I spoke, he listened too closely. The air between us held a tension neither of us named. We spent more time together. Aman would cook with me in the evenings, sleeves rolled up, humming songs I didn't recognize. He'd lean in too close under the guise of reaching for spice jars or tasting the sauce. I didn't stop him. And when his shoulder brushed mine or his fingers lingered after handing me a dish, I didn't pull away. We started walking late at night, past the quiet streets and shuttered storefronts. The world felt still in those hours, like we were the only ones awake, the only ones who mattered. We talked about everything, his uncertain plans, my quiet regrets, love, fear, loneliness. He listened like someone who truly wanted to know who I was, not just what I told the world. One night, we sat on the old swing in the backyard as thunder rolled in the distance. Rain began to fall, slow at first, then steadier. He didn't move, and neither did I. The wet chill clung to our skin, but I couldn't feel anything except the closeness between us. "I feel safe with you," he whispered, eyes locked on the dark sky. "Not judged. Not pitied. Just known. I turned to him, and for the first time, I didn't hide the softness in my gaze. His hair clung to his forehead, lips parted like he was waiting to speak but couldn't find the words. I reached out, not to hold, not to take, but simply to brush the rain from his cheek. That was all it took. He leaned in, not for a kiss, but for the comfort of being held. My arms opened, and he folded into them, small and trembling and so painfully real. I could feel his heartbeat, rapid and unsure, sinking with mine in the silence. In that moment, nothing was spoken, but everything was understood. Later, lying awake in the quiet of my room, I stared at the ceiling, the echo of him still in my arms. I had given him something I couldn't name, and taken something I hadn't meant to want. I told myself it was just a moment, that he was young, searching, and I was just a temporary home for his longing. But I knew the truth. We had crossed a line, and there was no way back. The days that followed were quieter. Not cold, just cautious, like we were both trying to pretend nothing had happened while secretly clutching the memory between our fingers. Aman no longer reached for me in the kitchen. His gaze, once open and eager, began to drift elsewhere. He spent more time in his room, phone in hand, thumbs dancing across the screen with a kind of focus I hadn't seen before. At first, I convinced myself it meant nothing. He was 19. He was allowed his world, his secrets. But the ache in my chest told me otherwise. One evening, I found him smiling to himself, cheeks flushed, eyes lit up like they used to be around me. "Who's got you laughing like that?" I asked, forcing a smile. His answer came with a shrug. "Just someone I met online. We've been talking for a while. He's fun." Fun. The word hit like a slap, sharp, casual, and dismissive. I wanted to ask if that boy knew what Aman looked like when he was sad. If he'd seen the way Aman curled up in the corner of the sofa with a blanket pulled to his chin. If he knew how many times Aman had said he feared being unwanted. But I said nothing. I watched from the sidelines as Aman became someone lighter, brighter, like a candle flickering in someone else's room. And I hated myself for how much that hurt. Jealousy settled in my bones like frost. I told myself I had no claim on him, that he was free to feel, to explore, to belong to someone else. But it didn't stop the bitterness. I caught myself pulling away, responding to his stories with vague nods, retreating into old habits of silence. Aman noticed. One night, after dinner, he lingered in the doorway of my room. "Did I do something wrong?" he asked, voice soft, eyes wide with confusion. I looked at him, really looked, and saw the boy I had let too close. "No," I said, though it felt like a lie. "You're just growing. Finding your own space. That's a good thing." He stepped closer, brows furrowed. "You're pulling away from me." "I have to," I whispered, "because I forgot my place. And maybe you're starting to forget yours." His face twisted, pain flashing behind his eyes. "I didn't mean to hurt you." I smiled, but it didn't reach my chest. "You didn't. I did that myself." He hesitated, then asked the question I'd been avoiding. "Did you love me, or just the idea of me needing you?" I didn't answer, because I wasn't sure I knew. He waited, then turned and left, the sound of his footsteps echoing down the hallway. I sat alone in that silence, haunted by the wish he made, and the cost it carried. The morning Aman was set to leave, the sky was overcast, gray and swollen, as if the clouds themselves carried what we could not say. He moved quietly through the house, packing his things with a stillness I hadn't seen in him before. There was no humming, no teasing remarks, just the soft rustle of fabric, the muted click of zippers. I watched from the doorway, hands in my pockets, unsure of whether to speak or let silence carry us through this goodbye. He turned, finally, and our eyes met. Neither of us smiled. "Do you want to talk?" he asked, voice careful, as if he was afraid the question itself might shatter something fragile. I nodded and gestured to the couch. We sat in the living room where so many of our moments had unfolded, shared meals, laughter, quiet confessions. Now, it felt foreign, like a stage after the play has ended, the spotlight dimmed. "I'm sorry," I began. "Not for what happened, but for making you carry the weight of it." He shook his head. "You didn't make me. I came to you. I asked for something. You gave it. But I forgot you're still learning what love means," I said, pausing. "And I let my loneliness mistake that for something more." He looked down at his hands, fingers curled into his palms. "I don't regret anything. I just didn't know love could feel so full and so confusing at the same time." "You were my second chance at feeling again," I admitted. "But maybe I wasn't supposed to keep you." He smiled, faint and bittersweet. "Maybe some people come into our lives just to remind us that we can feel again, not to stay." We sat in silence, the kind that isn't heavy but sacred. Then he reached into his bag and pulled out a note, folded, worn at the edges. "I wrote this last night. It's not much, but it's yours." I didn't open it. Not yet. As he stood by the door, suitcase in hand, I asked the one question I had left. "Did I make your wish come true?" He turned, and for the first time in days, smiled with something close to peace. "You did. Even if it couldn't last, you showed me it was possible." He stepped outside, the door clicking shut behind him, and I stood alone again, just like I had before he came. But something in the stillness had changed. It wasn't empty anymore. That night, I opened the note. It read, "You were my first love, not in age, but in truth. Thank you for showing me what that means." I folded it gently, held it to my chest, and whispered to no one. He had a wish, and I gave him everything I had. And maybe that's what love really is. Even when it's not forever.